Hey everybody, welcome again. We're glad to see you here on Friday. Um, we just have a question that we're working through, but I just would remind you that we're going to be having services inside this Sunday. So we've just spent some time doing some preparation to make sure we have all the social distancing things spaced out and things ready to go. So we're looking forward to seeing you Sunday morning around 10:30. We're going to open the doors at 10:15. But anyway, coming back to our conversation from this past Sunday, as we finished up, Jesus said, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock." And he's in talking to the Christian and inviting the Christian to invite him in and to engage with him and to meet with him and to sup with him and to fellowship with him. But as we talked on Sunday, overwhelmingly often we apply this verse, many people will apply this verse to an unsaved person, a person far from God, saying to them, listen, Jesus wants a relationship with you and he's knocking at your heart. So guys, I think the question that I would really kind of pose us and ask us to think about, why is it that so often Christians take that verse where Jesus is talking to us as Christians, and why do we not really engage that question for ourselves as Christians, but why do we have a tendency to kind of push that question off of us as a Christian and kind of push it out to a secular, unsaved person? And why is that tendency there to push that question out instead of really engaging that question as Jesus is talking to us? So, question for you to chew on as well as we answer this and kind of walk through this a little bit. What's your thoughts, guys?
As I think about it, I'm not sure as believers we just push it off on a secular person, unsaved person, as much as we tend to do that with a lot of verses to anybody else.
Okay.
So I've been thinking through the life of David, right? You know, David is now king. We read about this in 2 Samuel, right? He's now king. He's supposed to be out at war, but he chooses to stay home.
Walking around the rooftop.
Walking around the rooftop, sees a lovely woman, invites her over, sleeps with her, gets her pregnant, then to cover it up, has her husband killed. We all know the story. He's confronted by the prophet Nathan, and, you know, Nathan goes through this whole scenario, and what is David's first response? That guy should fry. And that's when Nathan says, I'm talking about you, David. And I think so often we read a passage of Scripture and we have a hard time acknowledging, maybe it's not a hard time, maybe we just refuse to look at, maybe we have a hard time looking at it, the wickedness in our own hearts and the sin in our own lives, and it's so much easier to go see it in somebody else's life. And I think that's why Jesus says, you know, before you go to take the speck out of somebody else's eye, remove the plank or the log out of your own. I don't think he's saying that we shouldn't try to take the speck out of somebody else's eye. It's just that we need to examine our own hearts as well. We ignore the buildup of the specks in our own eye to the point where they're a plank, because we don't often stop and acknowledge our own wickedness and sinfulness.
What are you thinking, Connor?
So I guess there's three, kind of jumping off what Rich said. So three, I guess, reasons why this might happen. One, it's probably pride, and yeah, me and Jesus, we're fine. You know, I go to church whenever, I read my Bible whenever. We're okay. This is obviously for the unsaved person, because you're saved, you're fine, and maybe they see Christianity as like you make that decision, you pray that prayer, and then you're kind of done, whatever. Jesus is fine no matter what you do. So I think that's one side of it, where maybe it makes us feel uncomfortable, and we just kind of shove it off to those unsaved people over there. It's not me. Second reason, and kind of flows into the third, it just might be bad hermeneutics, as they're not really looking at the context, and they kind of look at it real briefly. Oh, well, obviously that's talking about unbelievers, and then it's just maybe ignorantly used to talk about unsaved people. And then the third reason might be the person who's looking at that might know it's talking about the saved person, but it's a really nice, convenient illustration to talk about salvation. So I'm just going to kind of rip it out of its context, like Andrew talked about, and use it, and it's not that big of a deal, which I think it is. But I think those are the three things that popped out of my thinking.
I kind of like what you guys are saying. I think for me, as I have processed through this, I think sometimes the reason we kind of push it off towards someone else is because we're not always willing to do the internal work or to have that internal conversation with Jesus about what's going on inside of us. I think sometimes we are functioning like that Laodicean. You know, we're relatively content, we're self-sufficient, we kind of have everything lined up and put together. And I don't want to be unspiritual or appear unspiritual or think of myself as unspiritual. So I will apply that to those people who I know really need it, instead of really taking that time to say and be honest about my own walk, my own journey, my own relationship with Jesus. So, which is kind of very similar to what you're saying. So, well, we hope you enjoyed our time as we think about this. I would encourage you to just take a few moments today to ask Jesus, am I meeting with you? Am I giving you space and time in my life? Or am I kind of pushing you off? Because as Jesus extended that challenge to the Church of Laodicea, he's also really extending that challenge to us. Jesus saved us and drew us to himself because he wants an active relationship with us. He doesn't want a distant relationship. He wants an intimate, close relationship. He wants to be a part of our lives. So I would encourage you to really consider that verse more seriously and say, Jesus, what does it mean and what does it take for me to really walk with you and have that relationship with you that you desire me to have? Chew on that, and we'll see you Sunday. Have a great rest of the week.